Welcome back. Four big challenges need attention in the executive branch in 2026. According to the Government Accountability Office, it lists federal disaster assistance, expediting cyber and critical infrastructure protections, the government's human capital challenges, and restructuring the Postal Service as the big four for 2026. Jessica Lucas-Judy is Director of Strategic Initiatives at GAO. Jessica, welcome back. It's great to have you on the program. Your now former boss, Gene Dodaro, outlined those four areas, kind of highlighting them from the high-risk list at testimony to Congress before the holidays. Why those four areas out of the 38 total that are on the high-risk list?
Yeah, really, I think he probably could have highlighted any number of them, but those four in particular are some of the ones that have the most direct impact on the public, or most visible. And as he described it, really, these are things that GAO uses as indicators, blinking lights, yellow or red, if you will. And it's important to get on top of them before they become a crisis. And so we wanted to really highlight federal disaster assistance. You know, for example, that was one that GAO added to the high-risk list in 2025. Disasters are becoming more frequent, more intense. There were, I believe it was 27 different federal disasters in 2024 that had $1 billion or more in economic impact, in addition to, you know, sadly causing hundreds of deaths. And it's very important that the federal government reform its response to make sure that it can better serve the public and help people who are in crisis and help them get the help that they need, whether that's in transportation or housing or healthcare or other areas.
We were talking before we went on the air. The high-risk list has been around since 1990, and federal disaster assistance is new on the list this year. Some of these others have been around for a long time. Some of the items on the high-risk list have been on it since 1990. What's the process by which you look at things that are going on in government? You look at every agency, you look at every aspect of agency operations over the course of a year. How do you determine that something is now bad enough that it needs to go on the list, or that it's done what it needed to do to recover and can come off?
Yes, we're looking for things that are at high risk of fraud, waste, abuse, or mismanagement, or they need significant reform. Things that, as I mentioned, you know, have a big financial impact or an impact on the public. And we're looking at not just as something itself a risk, but how well is the government positioned to manage that risk, whether it's in the leadership, or the capacity of the agency, funding and resources and people to be able to address the area. How well is the government managing and monitoring progress and moving towards goals? And so we keep an eye on those as we do our work. And there aren't that many areas that have come off over time, but there have been some. And certainly addressing recommendations that GAO has made related to high-risk areas has resulted so far in more than $811 billion in financial benefits, as well as significant improvements in government services. So it's something that we think is very important.
Of the items that have come off the high-risk list over the years, are there common themes among what those organizations did, not just for the sake of coming off the list, but to solve the problems that resulted in them getting on the list in the first place?
A lot of it has to do with coordination, just making sure that there's good collaboration among the different stakeholders that are involved, a good communication with Congress and with the agencies that are affected, with the populations that they're serving, and, you know, better able to share information among the different entities that are involved to be able to address. Some of these are really, really big, complicated problems, and they require a whole of government approach. So we've outlined in our reports over the years practices that agencies can take and that Congress can take to help address some of these high-risk areas and some of our success stories that we've been able to share.
When you say a whole of government approach, do you mean an enterprise approach where everybody's working on something together? An example would be the enterprise-wide HR IT system that OPM is starting to work on, or are you just talking about everybody at different agencies is kind of moving in the same direction, not necessarily connected to each other, but everybody's aware that whatever it is a problem and they're all working on it?
I would say probably both. You know, we've got examples of both, and some of it is in data sharing and communication, sharing best practices and success stories and things like that. You know, the disaster resilience or disaster relief area that we were talking about, that's one where 30 different federal agencies are involved. And it's important that those agencies be involved. They each have a role. It's evolved over time. But the result has been that it's, because it's so fragmented, as I said, it's really difficult for people who are trying to get services, get relief, to be able to know where to go. And so one of the suggestions that we've highlighted is to have a single portal or an application, so that regardless of the kind of assistance that somebody needs, they only have to go to one place to get it. And then it's on the part of the federal agencies that are involved to figure out who's best equipped to be able to serve that. Now that's only one option. There are others, including consolidating the response, that might help.
And your job, as you and your colleagues have told me many times over the years, is not to tell the agency how they should do it. It's to suggest this is the issue that, if solved, would result in better results. Do I have that right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. You've used the terms on this program and in other times that you've been on over the years: fragmentation, duplication, overlap. Overlap, I get. Fragmentation, you described a moment ago. Mm-hmm. Duplication's pretty straightforward too, isn't it? I mean, are all those terms as obvious as they appear to be?
They are, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, and it's not even always important to know that there's, this is overlap and this is duplication, but more we're focusing on the effect, right? What does this actually mean as far as the service that's being provided? Is it clear? Are there clear roles and responsibilities? Are there clear objectives? Does everyone know what it is that they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve? And how to know when they're successful, how to know, when they've actually met the goal. And so those are some of the things that we really focus on, are the outcomes more than the actual mechanisms themselves.
I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that this testimony was delivered to Congress about these 4 areas in particular by your now former boss, Gene Dodaro. The Comptroller General of the United States. His 15-year term expired at the end of December. What did Gene mean to your organization? I interviewed him a number of times, always learned from him. What did he mean, and what does his not being there mean now that we're in January of 26?
I think he's left behind a really great legacy of leaders who are able to carry on the vision that he had for the organization. We've talked about the high-risk list. That was one of the things he was instrumental in helping to put in place, and it's work that we're going to continue. He was also very involved in another piece of the testimony that we were talking about with the nation's fiscal health, and making sure that the federal government is poised to be on a more sustainable fiscal path moving forward. So he was really able to bring together the breadth of knowledge from his years of service, to really take a broad approach, looking across the whole government. He had a great sense of the history, how we got where we were, and able to make connections among people and among different ideas. And so those are things that we're definitely going to be trying to carry on.
The only problem that I ever had in all the conversations that I had with Gene is that he was a Steelers fan. And after this weekend's game as a Ravens fan, I'm quite distraught, and I know he's quite happy. Final thought, Jessica, what do you look at as you prepare to do the next high-risk list in all of the work that you've done to think about what might have to join federal disaster assistance to go on next time?
Right. We're really going to be looking at what are the important things for Congress, because we do time this in the new Congress coming in, and so we want to be able to help focus their attention on areas that we think are particularly in need of their concerted efforts. And so we'll be looking at progress that agencies have made in addressing the hundreds of recommendations that we have in each of these areas, and where there might be additional risks.
Jessica, it's great to have you on the program again. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
You can read more about the high-risk list on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com.